Well, great. I think first, I surveyed the crowd, a lot of retail. We're starting with retail, and I think there's a lot of work to be done in terms of compliance and, operating with integrity. Martha, when we talk about operating with integrity, what does that mean to you and your experience in the business?
So when we came in 2019, 2020, we of course had some basic regulation already in place. We understood that in order to protect ourselves, our family, our business, and our clients, we were going to need to come at this in an educational perspective, which is why right away, I really thought this was going to be kind of Eddie's thing and I was going to do this. And then Eddie's like, hey, you have this educational background. And that's what was really going to change this industry is we're going to have to educate, not only educate in the laws, but in the product itself. And so I quickly found myself doing this full time with him and really coming at this from education. So this starts even from hiring, from our brand, how we want to represent ourselves as an industry, participating, educating ourselves, educating others. So for me, education is the biggest piece to this. And it goes all the way to who we hire, how they're articulating themselves. Can they articulate themselves? Can they protect not only themselves, but the business as well?
So in terms of education, you're talking about, say, when a customer comes in so that they can have confidence that, the products that are on the shelf are the kind of products that you should be selling. And also to the extent that they can explain what those products, the efficacy or the reaction to those products.
Right.
If those two things are true, how do you go about doing that? And this is a nascent industry, so much change. How do you make sure that not only yourself, but your staff are up to speed in a way that you're really comfortable with?
Yeah, so I think that actually starts with the interview process. So even when I'm releasing that we need a position within either the retail location or even on the farm, we have a quick survey that they fill out to even get an interview. So I'm not going to just interview anyone who comes and says you need help. We do 3 basic questions. Number 1, what do you know about Oak Cliff cultivators? I want to know, do they know? Have they looked us up? Are they familiar with our brand? Because we worked very hard on that. Number 2, tell me what you already know about regulations in Texas, local or federal. And my 3rd question is, what personal experiences do you have with hemp or marijuana? So those are my 3 basic questions when we put out for a position. And so I get these survey. We just hired about a year ago was the last time we hired, got maybe 25 responses. From those 25, maybe a few handful didn't even fill out the survey question. They just filled out their basic information. That's a red flag. Okay, we're not even going to take time on that one. And then the others, it depends on how they respond to that. Right. So one of my big red flags is if they just wrote all they want is to get high, that to me is not somebody that I want to be representing our brand. Right. Like, I just want to be high or whatever it is. I understand. I get it. Part of that recreational use is important. But our clientele who we want coming and we really understand is going to keep our business thriving are those who are using it for a therapeutic alternative approach to medicine. Right. So we know that the vast majority of our clientele are soccer moms who are going through menopause. How many questions I have about menopause, and also our older generation, right? So coming at it from a recreational perspective is important, but that's not really the brand that we're always reflecting. We appreciate it. We get it. My husband especially is more on the recreational side than I am, but I use it for therapeutic purposes. And so we're needing to make sure that whoever we have forward facing working with our clients have that understanding. So it starts with interview, who we bring on to the staff. But then not only who we bring on, it's how do we educate them and how do we prepare them for the interactions they're going to have with our clients. So we do go into training, and with onboarding, something that we do in onboarding with our staff is going to be first and foremost, even before they come in to see me, I already send them a module that I created where they have to learn a little bit about us, basic understanding of the laws, understanding, even though they might be working in retail, have nothing to do with our farm, they still need to understand TDA, and I'm talking basic overviews, right? So TDA, dishes, code enforcement, how these 3 things work together. I have a couple videos that I give basic understanding of endocannabinoid systems. I even have one that talks a little about children because we do get parents that come in. We talk about things that, just basic videos with some Q&A stuff that they have to do prior to coming in for their first day. We do tell them when they interview, once we've decided to take them on as an employee, we do tell them, like, yes, this is going to be paid train time. You have to dedicate 6 hours to this module. Once that module's completed, we'll set up a time for you to come in and work one-on-one with me, where we go more through SOPs. But even the SOP piece, which we did create a standard operating procedure that we keep up with, and we constantly are changing and adding as things are happening. We devote most of that one-on-one training time when they come in to education. So basic education, role-playing different client scenarios, talking about the endocannabinoid system, ensuring we understand basic laws, things like that, because what I'm intending to do is be able to leave my business, have somebody who's there, dishes shows up, law enforcement shows up, you are confident not only to protect yourself, but our business as well. So I don't want to put anyone at risk to be arrested for misquoting themselves or branding us in a way that we're not. So we spend a lot of time on that. We do kind of a gradual release. So you're here with me, we're working one-on-one, we're doing this training. I put you on the floor, but now you're shadowing me for a day or two because I want you to hear the interactions I'm having. I'm really using that time for you to more learn the technical side, learning how to run the register, but also listening to what I'm saying, how I'm interacting, those pieces. Then I'm going to have you do it. I'm going to run the register, and I want to hear you interact with our clients. Are you saying what we're expecting you to say? And then I get comfortable enough to be like, okay, that's usually about a 2-week process, and I know that. So I want to make sure that if you're coming in, you're somebody that I'm not going to spend 2 weeks in training and then you're going to just, take off. So we talk about that. We even have a 30-day, like, if this works out for you and doesn't, we have like a 30-day contract when we first start. And in 30 days, if this isn't working for you or for us, then, good luck. And we kind of go from there. And I'll definitely say the employees we've had for a while. And even when I'm screening my employees, I'm looking for skill sets that I want. Like one of my best employees, she's a paralegal, Monday through Friday. She's a college student. She just wanted to work 1 day a week. And I'm like, really, I really needed more than that, but I'll take you 1 day a week because now you're my compliance officer and I'm going to have you help because you can use those paralegal skills to help me with compliance, right?
Let me interrupt you because I've got a lot. There's a lot to unpack here.
Yes.
And I want to make sure we get through a lot of
perfect.
I want to break it up a little bit into baby.
Sure.
In terms of the profile of the type of applicants you like to see. So 100 years ago when I started in this business, it was pharma-based, medicine only, and we were hiring farm techs. And we quickly realized that was not the way to do this because we needed people that actually were from hospitality and understood how to hold people's hands through a process. You need a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Yeah.
It sort of evolved over time. In your experience, what are the types of folks from different professional backgrounds that have worked out the best? Well, when you see a certain mix, you're like, that type of person, that's a sweet spot. Is there such a thing?
Yeah.
What have you seen?
Yeah, so a couple skill sets, like the 3 main employees that because we're very small. So we had 3 main employees. Things that I was looking for, like I said, the paralegal, I was like, I wish we could have you more days, but we're going to get 1 day. I want to hire you because you have a certain skill set. The other one that we had, she was an esthetist. So she had some background in regards to, lotions and topicals, and she came with a wealth of knowledge, but she also had a lot of sales experience, worked for some of the bigger makeup companies and things like that. So we were like, oh, great, we're going to get to learn a little bit on sales because although I was an educator and I came with some good skill sets, I didn't have sales as one of my things. I never really worked in sales. So now I have somebody who has really great sales experience, and she's been able to give a lot to our company. We had another who worked a lot in like GMP packaging in regards to, they do in Dallas, there's a place called Emporium Pies. He really led a lot of the background of, how to, and making sure that he kind of ran a warehouse where they made the pies and how all of that works with packaging and things like that. So these are skill sets that I'm like, we don't have that knowledge. We can learn from them. And so we brought in those types of people.
No, I think an important part of what we talked about operating integrity is products.
Exactly.
So what kind of process do you have to make sure that when, I don't know who's approaching you, but the manufacturers, the distributors, what have you, when they come to meet with you, what are you looking for, and what are the kinds of questions you're asking, and how do you make sure this stuff isn't, full of pesticides and harmful to people, or is it made with licenses, et cetera, et cetera?
Exactly.
Tell us a little bit about how you developed your process and why you're comfortable if somebody goes into one of your locations that they are going to get a legit product that's compliant.
Yeah, so I don't know, for you guys who own retail spaces, we have lots of salespeople that come by, bring us samples. And so when we're looking at these samples, there's a couple things I'm looking for, lots of red flags that will occur. First and foremost, I will tell you, Eddie and I operate, our ethos is Texas. We wanted to help the Texas brands grow. So we will, first and foremost, when we started our retail space, for a while, we were just Texas-based products. We pretty much only carried products where we knew the farmer, we knew where it was coming from. We continue that. However, because of all of these uncertainties in regulation and legislation, a lot of these Texas-based companies went out of business, had to change their model. So it became harder and harder to find certain products, even for us. I mean, we were also manufacturers. We used to create like gummies, and we created all these things. And we realized, like, okay, with all this uncertainty, is it smart for us to invest in making this, and we have to get this many gummies and do all this, or is it better to just bring in other brands? So when we decided to start bringing in other brands, we wanted to start with supporting Texas. I wanted to make sure, could we say we've been to the farm, we know the farmer, we know where it's coming from, those pieces, are they licensed? But now we're bringing in brands that we maybe are not as familiar with. So what I'm looking for is, first and foremost, my very first thing that I look for, if I can scan that QR code and it goes to an actual COA, full panel is always the best, but it's easy to get to. It's not a dead link. It's not going to send me to a website where I can't find the COA and you're just like, wait, this is too overwhelming. That's like my first thing. Like when you come in, I scan it. I'll even scan it while the salesperson is there. Like, hey, I can't find the COA. There's like, no, this link's not working. Or to me, that's a red flag. Like, I don't even want to even work, that I'm not going to even work with that. A lot of times even word of mouth, right? So like one of my friends is here, she has a retail space. Sometimes she'll say, oh, I like this brand, or we've been to her shop, or she's been to our shop, and we kind of talk through that. Word of mouth is always, one of the best ones, but we're looking at COAs. We're looking at, do we know the company? I actually have qualifying questions that I make kind of pose to them. Licensing, things like that. Where do you make the product? There's certain types of products that we prefer. We are more of a rosin or resin-based product. We prefer full spectrum. We don't have a lot of broad spectrum, but there's a couple things that we do have. We're looking at labeling. We're looking at GMPs. We're kind of asking those questions when we're bringing in those products. Another thing is, preferably for our business, is we are more of a low to middle dose type business. Like the highest dose you're going to find in my store is probably 25 milligrams per edible, right? So the package might have more than that, but per gummy or per edible, the highest I'm going to go is probably 25. I don't care anything that's really 50, 100 or any of those things, because we know that those products are not necessarily going to be the best products. So that's kind of my pieces of what I'm looking for, but it's going to be COA. It's going to be qualifying those people and asking if they're licensing and getting their information. Want to know where the grow's coming from, where the strain's coming from, and the labeling is really big for me as well.
Tell us about this idea of keeping a compliance binder. We talked a lot about that in our prep, and can you explain how important that was, not just for the business, but for training employees? Can you tell our audience a little bit about that?
Yeah, so one of the main things I decided when Eddie and I were running this on our own, it's one thing where we're running it on our own and we kind of have this in our head, but it's another one I'm going to leave somebody in charge. Not only that, but we had been on the farm, we had been inspected by TDA a couple of times. Farming was a lot easier than retail, because farming, you just need the lot permit, you just need to show your license. It's less work in a way. But when you go to retail, not only do I have to stay compliant with my bank, I have to stay compliant with my payment processor, I have to stay compliant and be prepared for dishes investigation. We were visited by dishes twice within a 1 year. And what they came in, the first inspection, I was so grateful that I spent all that time on my compliance binder. It was funny because the first one, Eddie was there and he knew I made the binder. He had never really looked at the binder. And so when they came in and he was able to present it, he called me later. He was like, oh, it was so much easier. But what I have in this binder is first is the cover page where it has who the owners are, you know, our emails, our phone numbers, kind of our contact information, because if Dishes comes in and it's my employee there, we want to be able to, they can communicate with us, right? It has the name of my attorney. So we do have a cannabis attorney that we have on retainer, has her information on there. When you turn the page, first tab is going to be all of our licensing, right? So what is not only our tax permit, but our hemp permit. Now because not only are we retail, but we also have a firm. So we have all of those permits and things in there. The next tab after that is going to be SOPs. So we have a standard operating procedure from turning on the payment processor to all of the legalities and the laws and things this way. Next tab is going to be my employee files, where they have to not only where their contract is, but also their SOPs. They have a one page they have to sign with a couple bullet points of things that I need to ensure that they understand that they're held accountable for. For example, our SOP says you do not sell to anyone under 21. We have been doing this since 2019. We're parents. I don't want anyone to come into my shop, even though the state did not require that. We required that. And so I have on there, if you sell to somebody under 21, you're held accountable. If the law enforcement comes in, is undercover, is asking questions, and you sold to them, then that's on you because we told you not to do that. Other things like medical claims are on there. Like you can't make a medical claim that this will cure cancer. You can't make those types of things. So they signed that. That's in there. And then I also, what we learned, I always had all of our COAs. I have it, if you remember those tabs that are all alpha. I have all the COAs based on the brand or whatever it is. All COAs are in there. What I didn't have in our first inspection where they deemed us is we didn't have all the invoices. So we had them, I have a file on Google where we keep that, but we didn't have it like printed. So they were asking us things like, well, where did you purchase this? Where did you get this product? So the second time around, we had a whole section for invoicing. And so it's easier, of course, if it's one brand that we run and we can have one just for them, that particular brand. But if you go to wholesale and there's so many different kinds, I have them by wholesale. So, whatever company you work with, we have all those invoices ready. So the second time Dishes came, it was pretty interesting. They came back and they asked the two things we were on the first round. It was invoices, but it was also a couple of the labels, which I didn't even think about. And I would learn more from Andrea, but one of the things is some of the things that we purchased or we had on the shelves didn't have allergens, which didn't even occur to me. I mean, I didn't know that they were supposed to have allergens on the edible products, on certain products, not all of them, but some of them. And so they said, well, you got to pull these off because this doesn't have a label that shows what allergens are within the product. And so we had to pull those. That was something that never occurred to me that you needed to have. So when now moving forward, that is something we look for in regards to labeling. Does it have allergens? Does it have the manufacturer on there? Those are kind of things we look for. We didn't realize we needed from the first inspection. So when the second inspection came through, binder was ready, handed over to them. Here you go. And it was interesting. She brought a trainee with her. And one of the questions is a kind of a brag for us is she's like, well, you guys are so prepared. I want the trainee to see kind of what we're looking for. Asked us a lot of questions too. That's the thing with our inspectors, even TDA and Dishes, they had just as many questions for us as we did for them because this is so new for so many. So we had that binder ready again and you can just hand it over. We were lucky enough that we were there for both inspections, but I'm always thinking if I'm not there, if I'm in Austin and my staff is there alone, are they ready and are they prepared?
Super interesting, super informative. There's a reason we structured this talk to go with retail first and also anecdotally, most of the people in this room are running retail operations. I'm not sure who will be watching or listening to this later. But having Andrea explain GMP manufacturing standards, for us, she is such an expert and has worked with the biggest companies in the United States, both in the medical cannabis market and then in the hemp-derived product manufacturing market, that hopefully you will be able to get additional questions to QA, QC, the products that are, you're being solicited with through distributors. Because to me, you need to have both. You need to understand the front end about how to run the retail and your responsibilities, but you also have to go a little deeper and understand the manufacturing standards that, are being used to make these products that people are telling you that you should put on your shelves. Whether they have the right label or not, you need to sort of better understand how people can make these products, what those standards can and should be, what the future is going to look like, so that you can see around the corner and make sure that there are no adverse reactions, or you're not going to get recalls because the COA is 18 months old or whatever it is. So with that, Andrea, tell us a little bit about what you think is important if you owned a retail store, knowing everything that you know about manufacturing. How would we dovetail onto the not so obvious things like the allergen label? If you were going back in time and let's say that you got retained by Martha, and she wanted you to examine the manufacturing standards or the processes that, let's say, the manufacturers of gummies were making. What are the things that you would look for?
Right. Well, so if I was retained as like a QA QC consultant, I think first, so GMP, because I think you asked me to explain it with simple words, is being able to make the same product the same way every single time and be able to explain it to somebody. So, I think one of the things is if I was going to go to a manufacturer and be like, hey, we want to carry all your beverages, I would be asking those questions. Like, there's a whole list, first of all, like if you can get for a GMP audit and just be like, tick, 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 but that's kind of pretty easy to do. Like, people can check boxes. So you're really looking to see if people actually understand, because while I love a compliance binder and I think it's perfect, when you're in manufacturing, SOPs don't, yes, they're there for the binder for an audit, but what really needs to happen from an operationally integrous space is that people need to actually know. They need to be written for, not just for compliance and for regulators, they need to be written for the people using the SOPs. Right. Not only for safety. When I think about safety, everyone's like the consumer safety, I also think a lot about, I worked in these buildings that are danger, lots of dangers there. Also for the safety of the people that are actually working there, right? Do we want to be supporting companies that are putting their employees at risk? Nonetheless, the consumer that's going to consume that product. So, in general, I would go in there and I would follow a general, audit, but I would be actually asking different people if they knew what they were doing. And if they can explain it and they understand it and they have SOPs. So I was like, SOPs, cool, good for regulation and good for getting audited. However, there then should be some work instructions somewhere. And I might ask about that. While it's not required, same thing, we're a self-regulated industry at this point, right? So I'd also be like, hey, so do you have work instructions? What do those look like? Do you have batch records? What are the batch records? What's your sanitation procedure look like? Do you guys keep up on that? And so I was thinking about this over the weekend or before doesn't matter what. Well, however, what I thought about was AI is such a great tool we have right now. I'm like, I would totally put, because my biggest thing is rules are changing all the time. And that was always the biggest issue where I talk about all of a sudden you have SOP and then it's no longer up to date. How do we keep that up to date? With AI now, just be like, oop, new law, put it in there and you have with your little project to only search this, you can use LM Notebook too, nonetheless, right? And be like, now where do I need this law here? Which SOPs need to be changed? Update all these SOPs. That I think is going to be such a great save for people for the compliance standpoint. But now, how do you tell the people? You need to walk around the building and actually ask. That's what I would do. I'd walk around the building and talk to the people working and ask really, not crazy questions, but do they understand what they're doing and why they're doing it?
How many people in this room that operate retail, how many of you have ever asked a salesperson if their product has ever had a recall or an adverse event?
Thanks.
And how many has that happened? Will people have admitted that, or?
Yeah, it's more in California, but you have those issues, and then I've been in both alcohol and business, and you learn pretty quickly when you see somebody who is spitting code words or since with allergies product. Just an example in alcohol, when they talk about vodkas, and they always tell me the vodka is gluten free, and I'd say, well, all vodka is gluten free, but you can still to 90% water to 45. a little bit not, but
Yeah.
but every vodka and salesperson is going to tell me the exact same thing. This is good fight, and that's when I hear that from until now. And it's the same way with cannabis, where they'll start using terms that don't mean anything.
Yeah.
A lot of product problem that I have a lot of times is we use terminology that there's no legal definition of it. What is cured resin versus live resin, and what is purified live resin? What is these things? And they don't need anything, but you have to sell to the consumer. And so when people start making things up and telling things that aren't true, that's what had this bigger issue.
And I grew up in an era of what we called C of A's to the dirt, or certificate of analysis to the dirt. When we were an ingredient company, and certainly an MSO cannabis, that was vertically integrated, that was understood. When you're sourcing or when you're seeing out in market, are manufacturers willing to show you, to the extent they can, the C of A's from the farm? And then are they willing to show you, not just the intermediate where they're sourcing them? How much visibility and transparency is out there, and how much is being asked for? Is there a lot or a little? I was just curious.
I feel like smaller companies tend to be more transparent and more with COAs and what they're doing with their procedures than the bigger teams. I feel like bigger and to wind out makes it a thought, and they're not as concentrating details.
Do they ever produce certificates of insurance, like the product liability insurance? Has that ever come up in the conversations?
Sometimes. No, seriously, sometimes. I have 3 stores, and I'm very, very picky with our product that we use. For one, I won't pay for any samples. You want to send me a sample, you need to send something.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to research it, and then I'm going to try it out myself. And I used to try everything that's in our store, but we have like 4,500 different products in my stores. And then I get some of my all-time long-term customers that I know are willing to try and give me back a positive feedback. So I do that. Then I also research the labeling, the packaging, things like that. I have a full binder that is just on training that we train for 4 weeks. I can sit in my stores. It looks like boutiques, every one of them. I'm not like a stock. I can get the $6 guy. I don't want that person. I focus on the people who are my age, which are easily over 16, that have major health issues. And so they want to come in, and we help them understand what's going to be your magic number, is what we call it. And then we want you to come back in 3 or 4 days and tell me if that worked. If it didn't, then we're going to help tweak everything. And so, we're pretty in-depth and concerned about how our people are and our customers, and they're our friends. And I have the employees that have been wanting to be for 5 years.
Well, Texas is a GMP state. If you're manufacturing, has anyone ever provided you with any sort of accreditation or certification of a third party that the manufacturing they have, that they're GMP in some way?
Yeah, it depends on who they are, but just CBD, Excite, Breathed, all of them, they're very, very, and right now, drinks are probably 20%, and I do probably 40 to 50,000, and I'm not basic evening, and that's just one of my stores. And so, but drinks are another thing that we're going into, but my employees, they have to know, does it have sugar? Because it's sugar-free. What kind of dye? Does it have lion's mane? What is lion's mane? We do a game at our store with our employees. Go tell me what's turkey tail. Do I have a product that has that? Lion's mane, ashwagandha. So, because I knew my employees to be able to understand what's going to happen when they have a customer who is a doctor. Because my biggest clients, believe it or not, are doctors, lawyers, nurses, and teachers. They kept us alive during COVID.
Super interesting. Well, look, to best use the expertise at this table, I liked playing this game where I like to pretend that we're all starting a company. And I like that a majority of us in this room are in the retail space. And I've been around long enough that sometimes we get the itch to maybe have our own line of product or our own brand. And maybe we can't afford Andrea, but we have her now. And I'm thinking to myself, well, if we wanted to start, let's say, a line of gummies, and I'd say, well, Andrea, what are we going to look for? How would we do this? Should we start a facility? Should we put the CapEx and the OpEx in? Should we fire a co-manufacturer? How would you help us? Because I could be wrong about this, but I feel like that itch is pretty routine and normal, and a lot of retail folks are feeling it and wanting to be in both ends. They want to be a manufacturer, and they'd also like to be selling through.
Mm-hmm. So some of you guys would like to have your own brand, basically, at your store? Yeah. So, I mean, I wouldn't go out and start your own manufacturing. Like, go ahead and find a contract manufacturer. And I only say that because you guys are a GMP state, so you can easily audit them. You can hire someone at, part-time to be able to go in and investigate and make sure and like help lead the way to make sure that you get, products of integrity. But I'm a big fan of doing one thing and doing it well. Pick your lane, build your systems to execute it. And what I've seen personally over and over, and I still get approached all the time to do again, is like, we want you to come in, we want to make gummies, we want to do topicals, we want to do soft gels, we want to do this. And I'm like, been there, done that, and here's what's going to happen. Like, it's not right now in a non-federal legal environment, like, it's just not going to work out well. So you're better off just going to someone who you know, or who you guys talk with each other, like whoever your contract manufacturers, and just align there, get a basic product. Don't over create it. Don't over engineer it. Keep it simple. And that's what, that's exactly.
I'm going to give you a chance to show off here a little bit, because this is very confusing to me. There are all these federal standards. There's federal standards for food safe, and there's for dietary supplement. There are different CFRs in the Federal Register.
Mm-hmm.
How does one, you can be GMP,
Mm-hmm.
how does one pick? And when you're looking at our fake co-manufacturer for our fake business to make our fake gummies, like, what are you looking for like their certifications, their accreditations, their sourcing, their supply chain integrity? What are the things? I know that you probably would go to AI2 and use your list, but outside of that, like, what about hot takes that for us, what would we be looking for? What kind of certifications, accreditations, what licensing, what are we looking for our co-manufacturer?
It's really, it's going to be 110, 117, which is for dietary ingredients and food, and the human food supplements. And you're going to also want potentially like kosher, and then ISO 9001, I think it is. So you want to make sure that they are to make sure your product comes out consistent every time. It's going to be like the ISO accreditation, make sure that the scales, like things like that, like the people aren't moving the scales around, and that they're calibrated ever so often, or specific frequencies. I would also, it just depends on what you really want to do. Like I said, how deep you want to go. But it's really, GMP is just what it is. Like, the FDA has drawn really good guidelines around it. I don't think anybody needs to be looking at 210 or 211, which is the active pharmaceutical ingredients. Those are APIs, right? We're not at that level. So if someone is, you might be paying more. So I would probably stay away from that and be like, but I would actually physically go to the building and I would walk around. Because one thing too is people are like, oh, we're GMP, but if they're not donning a doff or putting on, all of their PPE and taking it off in the same, in a different place, it's actually there are things that I walk in a building, I'm like, you're not GMP. Like, you showed someone a paper and got check marked, right? So I would actually physically go and do an inspection.
And also, with this truth in labeling movement that's been going on, organic has become a thing.
Yes. And
when we got our facility certified organic by the state of Montana, they were accrediting party, and it was a pain. It was a project. Do you see that, like, when you were with all these other companies and as you see the market, do you see a movement towards that in cannabinoids? I know it's difficult to get a third party to accredit it. And I think the market's going to eventually kind of want that. Do you see that happening? And are there professionals that are helping people do that?
I don't love organic certification, because there's a lot of different companies. Like, GMP is ran by one body, which is the FDA. And so people are contracted, different companies to do GMP. auditing but organic is like kind of still out there. Like, I don't think there's really good control over what's organic or what's not. A lot of different people can come in and certify. So to me, like, I don't know, it's pretty, sure. I mean, sure. But I would just be like, look, we can, if that's what's important to our brand. But it doesn't feel like there's a lot of integrity in organic labeling to me.
Well, it's good to know.
I also don't believe that like a lot of the cannabis is going to come back as organic, because I only know one company that I actually consult with that does grow organically. And I use those quotations because there's still some things that maybe aren't, but they don't have, like, if you look from a chemical standpoint and do the analytics, like, they're going to pass organic. But it's like, it's going to be, I think you're going to be hard pressed to find, I don't know if Eddie or you guys are growing or get to grow organic cannabis. So right there, I mean, unless, and then if you synthesize it, I mean, is that organic? So
Like that's not
exactly.
So we this we do organic cotton and peanuts on our farm. And totally different. There's so many years you cannot leave anything on your field. Here we have oil wells. So then we had an oil well that spilled onto our property. So then we had to spell Halliburton. You got to come in and you've got to dig so many things over the ground.
Yeah.
You spilled. And I can't plant anything in this area. So now you need to pay me for my crops that if I'm going to miss out on for so many years because you just now contaminated my crop.
Your product, yeah. Well, other certification too, just remind me, is NSF, which if you look at any of your bottles of like any nutraceuticals you take from GNC or wherever else, like the L-theanine or whatever else, it usually has an NSF, which is kind of, which I will tell you is super hard. Like, we went through NSF and it was like nightmare audit, like from the people there for real. But it's also, I just was also like, I mean, does your consumer care? I mean, I'm not trying to say like, don't do something because it's good, but like you also need to think about the return on investment.
Our fake company, we're scaling this to go public.
Yeah.
So, the answer is yes.
Well, then I'm going to tell you this first and foremost, then before you start anything, before you even think about what product you want to make, figure out, like, commit and marry the fact that you're going to have a document control program.
Yes.
Commit and marry the fact that you are going to have to hire someone to do QA, QC for part-time before full-time. And do know that you're going to have to also have a process where you are going to be revisiting this like probably every quarter. And it must include a CAPA program, which is corrective action plans. The corrective action plan is not only for you when you're buying stuff, but it's for the vendors too. So like if someone sells you some sugar or something else, like you can actually be like, we have a corrective action plan. The sugar wasn't as it said it would be on the C of A or this or that. So return it. So you want to like, you're going to be looking at raw materials coming in and so anyways, even it's like when you have corrective action plan, I'm sure you guys all do, for when a product, right, comes in. It's not just for if someone brings a product back to you, right? It's for what you purchase.
Where have you seen the biggest failures, without naming names, in terms of like how this process could end up hurting somebody when they don't do it right?
Hurting them how?
Well, like from a business point of view, they get a product, it's moldy or it's a recall, or from a manufacturing point of view, they're manufacturing something and they didn't do something correctly because they weren't following a process.
Mm-hmm.
Have there been any sort of incidents that you can remember without naming names where, these are sort of lessons that...
I mean, it always comes back to human error, period. Like almost always. Like when you always want to blame something else, but it's always going to come back to human error. So that's why I said at the last panel, like we need to build systems that don't rely on perfect people. Like your system has to be robust enough to not rely on people doing perfect things, because they're never going to. We're always going to make errors.
I understand.
Okay. So build good systems, execute on your systems. If you're trying to build out a product, or if you want to, have a co-man, you need to have a system in place on how to have checks and balances on them, how to get feedback loops, like how to handle situations when they come up and catch problems before they become crises.
So would it be fair to say that if you're in retail, and even if you're not considering manufacturing a product, you need to know something about GMP, you need to get some training in these food safe certifications and accreditations, and you should have your own version of a questionnaire that for every one of your suppliers or whoever darkens your doorstep with a new product, you give them, put it in writing, and they put it back in writing, and then you have some people test the product. I'm not talking about testing, but maybe. And that's sort of what you think the future should be, if it's not already.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So look, with our heavily capitalized fake company, that we're gonna make
Money's
these dollars.
not an issue. Great.
Money is no issue.
Perfect.
This is the world of make believe. We are in the world of make believe, which is a great place to live today.
Yes. Yeah.
We're gonna enjoy that for right now.
Okay.
And we're gonna make some gummies, and we're gonna sell through Martha's Place. We're gonna hire you. You're gonna come in. We're gonna source this. We're gonna go find a GMP accredited, certified manufacturer, and we're gonna get C of A's down to the dirt.
Yep.
We're gonna go kick the dirt on the. We're gonna go see the pictures of the hemp being grown.
Perfect.
And then we're gonna sign NDAs and go visit their processing facility, and we're gonna see how they make this stuff, and we're gonna check their logs and all that stuff. We're gonna get all their licenses. We're gonna do the whole thing.
Perfect.
Where do we go from there in terms of aspirational? So in terms of how I like pretending that we're going to create the best practices that the government and industry is going to catch up with. What are some things that we should be thinking about that you've seen you came from alcohol? We'll call them more mature industries.
Okay.
Like, what are you seeing that we should be thinking about maybe to put in place to layer on the top of this to make this fake company what we want it to be?
Yeah, I mean, more innovative packaging for sure.
Okay.
I would say we'd look at innovation packaging, and then also if we really have all the money, get some real world evidence. Let's do some consumer insight trials and get some data so we can actually produce. Yes, let's produce things that actually drive real effects. So then we can be the one company that says we actually can prove why we're able to say this helps with sleep. Like, we have real data that supports that. So, because right now we're all just, everyone's making the same CBN product and being like, this helps with sleep. But I don't even know if CBN totally helps for sleep, right? So that would be my thing. So I would innovate packaging without a doubt. I think that's a huge opportunity that's missed. And then real world evidence would be my.
So now we'll open it up to our shareholders of our new fake company.
Okay.
Gentlemen in the white.
What my biggest question right now is, like I said, come California, we were very steer, coming recreational. So there's a lot of different questions that would get to recreational wellness. Here, it's, for lack of a better term, being Texas is out more the Wild West in the sense of this thing. My thought process has always been, we don't make claims. We're always living in the world of the anecdote. Because the problem is this, that with the world, we have now testing on this product in reality. You talk about turbines and ultra specs and all these different things. How do we express how the product works for the customer without making claims that will clearly get us in trouble, that will clearly do things, and for the most part, might and probably are true. And that's the biggest thing for me. I'm trying to train a staff that across 3 stores in different demos that all do different things, and trying to staff to understand how to explain products to them in a real world example without making and putting us on the.
Yeah. I mean, this is going to a bigger issue in the whole industry in my opinion, between the regulated marijuana side and then the hemp side, is that there's so much data and information out there, right? I know, Nisha knows, there's so much data and information, and it's all just buried. And so what really needs to happen is we need both sides to unify, and we need everyone to share their data and their information. So then someone could start a nice little scientific coalition, not going to be me, but I'd be a part of it. And we could actually bring out real information about how these different profiles help. And then, or you have, companies like Credo making formulations that they're spending a ton of money going down long roads of FDA approvals to prove, that these different things can cause or can fulfill different need states. So it's a much bigger issue, I think, all around, because I think that there's a lot of data out there, honestly, from my experience. Even we did a ton of toxicology studies, right? So that's the other thing too, is safety. But I wouldn't encourage a lot of people to do toxicology because everyone's already done it. It's just no one publishes it or shares it because everyone thinks the way we fold a napkin in cannabis is IP, And
you can look at those FDA warning letters and work backwards from those.
Yeah.
And you could train your staff with counsel and get input from dishes. I mean, they're not going to Christians. Well, I don't know you're going to get any input from dishes. But my point is that you could definitely work backwards and talk about wellness and whatever you're comfortable with. But you're right to worry about that. And you're right that people do some things that come back and create liability for them without a doubt. Yeah. So any other questions for in the back?
So you had mentioned that dishes had at your shop, and that was internally focused and voice listed. Maybe that is just kind of our opposite to working times on they never mentioned maybe that most of the pretty weird issues were, but they're wondering if something like maybe the agents were looking for different things, or if there's like something in the regulations that make you point to saying that it was so this.
Yeah, I think what makes us a little different is we not only are licensed for retail, but we're licensed as producers and manufacturers because we also make a beverage. And so that's a good question. Also, the one when she came, the first one happened in August of 2024, I want to say, because there was an employee we had just hired, and I remember her being there. She was just terrified. And so that's where I stick. I want to say it was August 2024, the first inspection at the retail. And then she came back this past summer, I want to say, or spring, it was 2025. And when she first came in, she did come in because of our manufacturer license, our producer and manufacturer license. She came in and asked a couple questions on those. But then because we also had others, that's where the question came up for invoicing. Good question on, is it written somewhere? I don't know, and I didn't think to ask, but we did have them. We did have our invoices available. And my husband, he was the one that took it.
One of the, pre-rolls. So what is he with one of the agents that he has have pre-roll ships. You want to call some fun going back to the Biden. Why are these go through your house for being so check was to make sure that there was the graduation to the silver on the free roll side.
Oh yeah. And that happened because we were out of town, or the store was closed. So we were like, well, we don't want the pre-rolls to just been sitting out there. We didn't realize that, oh crap, we shouldn't have done that. But yeah, so there was a lot of question on that. And then the second time they just asked one again, they randomly pulled stuff off the shelf and just wanted to know where it came from and kind of, where we purchased those.
Good. What's your question?
To a marble comment. So the comptroller haven't been visited by dishes yet, just everybody else. But the comptroller came in. We wanted to see most of my invoices. Unfortunately, they're only tobacco. And so, because we sell hair products and tobacco products, and it's all on the same invoices, which makes it really difficult to have that all together. But but comptroller said 4 years. That's
4 years.
Yeah, keep on. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, go ahead.
I'm curious what your opinion is on the packaged, flower specifically versus deli style. I personally like to sell prepackaged because then my customers are leaving always have them sealed.
Yeah.
With the QR code per yard. But I know that deli style is really complicated, so I'm just curious outside.
Yeah, so we chose to do prepackaged, and we did that because, again, we're the growers. So we wanted more for compliance and ensuring that the product was clean, it's safe, and, we had a way we again, chose, kind of talking about integrity, we chose child-proof packaging from the start. We wanted to make sure that all of our packaging was child-proof. So we decided to pre-package ours, and even now in our store right now, we just sell pretty much our flour. So we ensure that it's pre-packaged. We don't do deli style. We were concerned about the deli style. We had a lot of concerns about it. And again, you have to think about, Eddie and I came from Texas. We don't really know the recreational market. We never lived in California or Colorado. We didn't know their perspective. And so we felt like we needed a little more control. What we also realized is law enforcement was not educated. So you have to think about when our first harvest was, we've harvested in September 2020. We had our first pop-up in October of 2020. And I remember we're standing outside of this beer garden and really just thinking historically what was just happening. We had all this flour prepackaged. There was a law enforcement officer nearby where our retail space is. And I remember him walking by and just what is happening, right? There was wait a minute. And so we found ourselves having to educate law enforcement a lot. we're lucky to live in Dallas, where it's like a little, they're a little more open-minded to it. But if you're in a rural area, that's a lot of risk, in my opinion. So we always think about, and our community is predominantly Black and brown, and I'm concerned about them walking out with a package that is not prepackaged and sealed. And I tell them, you can't just leave it out. I'm sorry, you can't. So have it safe. So for me, we do prepackaged because of the safety aspect of it. Do you have any insight?
I mean, no, that was great.
Okay.
Any other questions? In the back again.
Yeah. So this is, I guess, just kind of a random return question. At least I'd like to remind for that. And when things started getting like crazy last year, was stopped just because we're so confident that we don't go up did not have somebody have the saying, hey, we got the license, investigation. I'm just curious, like, if anybody else in this group does come by.
Yeah. Yep.
Very balance.
If we were streets and bosses like that, it's with bring out pre-no.
Yeah.
The worthy waste, and you were selling there, and you set our mics for.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
you're talking.
We do pop-ups.
Oh, you're a class student.
That's what
We carry like a very.
yeah.
Mini binder.
Yeah. It's a mini binder. And I post it. Like I have like a, one of those and it has our license on it. When everybody was getting raided in Dallas, that was really hard for us. And so we just kept it posted so people could see we were licensed. And I even in my binder in both the mini and I have the dishes and like just a couple excerpts and highlighted, and it's there. Like, just big excerpts that come out, like what is the law on in regards to flour? What is the law in regard? Because a lot of people don't know the 0.3% and how all that works, right? They're like, wait a minute, but how can you have 15 milligrams in this and that 0.3%? So we just kind of printed out and had it there. And I will tell you, every pop-up we do, I feel like if it's a good pop-up where there's like a big community, there's law enforcement.
Oh, you're.
And one time I just fun story, but like we had at this one huge event and all like 4 officers were in there talking to us, so nobody wanted to come talk to us, but they were educating. Like they were like, we don't get the education. Yeah, we were kind of like, I was like, hey, move that way. You're like, they were thankfully very open. They wanted to know. They're like, well, what is the difference and what is this? Because they're not educated on it, So
That's that.
We have a little bit of time left. Go ahead. What's your question?
Well, I noticed here you all kind of consumption levels.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we talked to her, and they don't exist where I'm at. But I have a space that I could turn into it. That's like the lounge. So I'm just curious, does that bring negative attention to the shop, or is that something that we're thinking, well, it can't be that?
Yeah, I think it depends on your city. Now, I'm really fortunate enough to have a great friend named Candace who's sitting in here, and she has the first consumption lounge in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And she did it completely, like legal. She went through all the hoops, and we were like, Candace, you're going to do this? And she's inspired us. So we have always so we're very lucky to be in a building that's really open-minded, right? And so we've always told our clients, like, if they want to smoke, just follow smoking rules. If it's posted, don't smoke there. But we have a beer garden near our spot, and people do go smoke. But I would definitely say connect with Candace because she actually was able to do that.
Well, I think we're.
To give a shout out back to you, Martha, because we've been doing this for just been in Teal 7 years, hanging with all of our first Eddie and Martha. It's all of our first times doing it. We're always like, I feel like I'm only reaching like, oh my gosh, I just experienced this. What should I do? How can I do this? How do I approach this? And they've just always been a wealth of information and just a bunch of knowledge for me. And I think that just both of them are all like as positive attitude of there's a decent pie for everyone.
There's no competition.
Yeah, and I'll send news people their way if I'm not available to do a new spot, and it's a great just not like friendship, but just a business relationship. And I'm very supportive. They I test coming to my lounge and just hung out. I carry their beverages and but yeah, I'm happy that it come up. But yes, Martha and Eddie I thank y'all so much because there's been times when I wanted to stop and they've given me inspiration and we're driving each other. No, come on, we showed probably 6-7 times.
Oh,
last year.
we gotta stop because we gotta go. So listen, thank you for coming. This was a wonderful conversation. If you want to join our fake company, I'll send out the subscription agreement.
Data.
And I will say, for those of you that haven't talked to Martha or Andrea, you should take advantage of talking to them after. Andrea doesn't live here, and like I said, she worked for the largest manufacturers in the United States of regulated cannabis and hemp, like OBX and Green Thumb Industries are the biggest companies in those spaces in the United States. OBX, I don't think exists anymore, but at the time was the largest manufacturer. And so you should take advantage of that. And obviously, Martha and Eddie have been around and know this space very well and are very credible and available. So thank you for coming. I've really enjoyed it, and I hope you also enjoyed it.
Cheers.
Oh, so
Thank you.
That was great.
And I think we will.
Alrighty.